absolutely loving that we're going right into the show here. I'm in a good mood. We're less than 30 away from the day, pal.
Yeah, I got to admit, I'm getting a little nervous, man. The polls are all heading in the right direction, but I am a little nervous.
Yeah, the polls are all over the place, though, don't you think? It's like every other day. It's like Harris +3 nationally, Trump +3 nationally the next day. You agree with me that national polls don't mean doo-doo right now, right?
Yeah, the national ones don't mean much, but if you look at the Real Clear Politics, the state-by-state map, he's inching closer. Now Michigan and Pennsylvania are on the average in his column over the last few weeks.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave it to you. I'm in such a good mood. I'm going to let Ross Galloway run the show. Do you want to talk about this polling first, or do you want to talk about the interview over the weekend with CBS 60 Minutes?
Yeah, I mean, since we're on the polling, let's jump on that for a minute.
All right, cool deal. Let me make sure I got the right one here. Make the right banner. We're going to talk about polling right now. The internal polling from Kamala Harris apparently is sending off alarm bells in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I'm going to put up a show that was done recently. I don't know who the host is. I believe his last name is Halpern. He has Sean Spicer on the show as well, talking about the Kamala Harris internal polling that is signaling alarm bells from down ballot politicians in the states that she must win.
Harris a lot on this program for a couple reasons. Okay, we know what Trump is. We don't need to spend every episode talking about January 6th. We'll talk about it if people want to bring it up. What's happening now with Kamala Harris is this is an experiment. Can you win a short campaign with an untested candidate? And what I'm telling you is happening in private polling is she's got a problem now. Okay?
Red alert. Red alert. Red alert.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I know he's going to go into the internals in those states and those local campaigns or in the Harris campaign themselves. But the public stuff is not looking good for her either. Trump, they always say, has a ceiling of 47, 48% nationwide. And in the swing states, it's about the same, to be honest. But she's inching downward. Every poll that's come out over the last couple of weeks, she's heading in the wrong direction. And Trump actually is ahead in a couple of these critical states.
Yeah, and let's talk for a moment about internal polling, though. Because I know we're talking about the polling that we're seeing publicly going on out there, and just, hey, Raptor, how you doing, pal? Glad to see you back here. Let's talk about internal polling and what that means. By the way, if you want to contribute, hit us up in the chat. The chat from my Twitter, if you're watching at G Berardelli, on the YouTubes and on the Rumbles, we'll get here in the studio and we'll be able to bring you into the conversation. But you're a veteran of many campaigns, locally, statewide. We've worked on some national stuff as well, peripherally. Internal polling. This is polling that is done, commissioned by the candidate, that is not done for public consumption, right? What is the use of an internal poll?
Yeah, well, a lot of these local candidates, and by local, I even mean like Senate seat races, they're looking at whether or not the top of the ticket is a drag on their own campaign. And the proof is in the pudding, right? Like, Harris has been to a couple of these swing states, and the people running for Senate don't show up to her events because they do not want to be tied to her, which is proof that their internal poll shows that the local candidates are outperforming her, and even though she's going to be on top of the ticket.
She's an anchor around our neck.
When let's say a congressional candidate or a U.S. Senate candidate is seeing polling, their own numbers dropping, and they can't explain why, that usually means that there's a drag from the top of the ticket on them that is stopping people from going straight down the line. I seem to remember an assembly candidate in the People's Republic of New York telling voters to vote straight down the line for the Republican and conservative. That seems to be the issue with these internal polls, right? We're seeing candidates who are seeing their numbers drop, even though their support is just as intense as it was before they saw the drop.
Yeah, and if you look at some of the polls, like Real Clear has Republicans leaning towards 51 Senate seats come November 5th, right? And I hope that that's true, but it works both ways. The Republican Party is has the same problem, right? Donald Trump is going to do very well in some of the states where the Senate candidates under him on the Republican side will not do as well. And it goes back to what I've been talking about. The Republican Party is effectively dead, right? There are people the people in North Carolina that had their houses destroyed if they want to vote for Trump, they're going to figure out a way to do it, in my view. But they're not going to come out for that gubernatorial candidate that's running as a Republican there, or other Senate races across the country. Carrie Lake in Arizona is a good example. I hope she wins. I think she's a great candidate. But she is trailing Trump drastically out in Arizona. Arizona's ahead in the state, and Carrie Lake's on the water by like 5 or 6 points.
And that's certainly a danger for any candidate. When you talk about ticket splitting, is basically what you're talking about, pal. Ticket splitting between candidates that you prefer on one side of the ballot, but you're voting for someone else on the other side of the ballot. And North Carolina, especially, that's a concern there because of the controversy there with the gubernatorial candidate. You mentioned Carrie Lake as well. It's a problem for candidates, but that's sort of the flip side of what we're seeing in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Let's let Mr. Halpern here explain what they're seeing in the Harris internal polling.
Cheering for Trump, it's not predicting Trump will win. She's got a problem. Please bring up the New York Times poll. So the new New York Times poll shows her up 3 nationally. We all know that 3 is like the bubble point, right? If she's up 3, she's got a chance to win the Electoral College, but they'd rather be at 4, and they don't want to be at 2. So 3 is right at the bubble. I'm not saying this Times poll is right. It's in line with other national polls. Now, bring up 102. Wall Street Journal has a story about Democrats really worried about the 3 Rust Belt states. We all know from our contacts in both campaigns that Pennsylvania is tough for her right now. And without Pennsylvania, there are paths, but there aren't many. There's no path without Wisconsin. So you see here, Tammy Baldwin's Senate campaign poll shows Harris down 3 in Wisconsin. We all said yesterday, Wisconsin and Michigan are looking worse for Harris than before.
Down 3 in internal polling done by Senator Tammy Baldwin. That's big.
Yeah, that's huge, because even the Real Clear average in Wisconsin has Harris, averaging out like 10 polls, only up 0.5, a 0.5% against Trump, while Michigan and Pennsylvania already swung towards Trump in the average. So I believe this 3 points is real.
And what makes you believe that's real? Is that because you're seeing the trend being Trump's friend?
Well, I also believe that I'm not plugging Real Clear Politics, but what I like that they do is on the pages of all their polls, they'll show you exactly what the race looked like on this date in history, both in 2020 and 2016. And in both of those, Clinton was crushing Trump by like 5 or 6 points in these swing states, and Biden was crushing him by like 7 or 8 points in most of the swing states. Now, Trump is either beating Harris or down by 0.5%. That's huge. Trump historically outperforms the polls, right? Whether it's people don't want to admit they're voting for Trump, or Trump voters are just harder to get on the phone, or however these polling places are doing the polls. But he outperforms polls. So I believe this 3 points is real, and I just pray to God I'm right.
Well, and it's interesting you bring up the 2016 race, because that was the race where Democrats took Michigan and Wisconsin. The Clinton campaign took that for granted. They took it that they were actually going to win those states. They didn't even visit those states a lot in the last 30 days of the race. Here we are, same situation. Is Harris making the same mistake here? And is the party trying to prevent her from making the same mistake?
Well, I don't think Harris is making the mistake. I think that, very short, compressed campaign. Harris started off by not doing media and actually doing campaign events. That failed miserably. She's a horrible campaigner, right? They had to bus in people to get crowds and the whatever else. So then she transitioned to doing media, and that wound up being even worse. Now she's resorted to going on The View, Howard Stern, Stephen Colbert. Like, I think she's going to stand on a soapbox on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan after this. Like, there's really nowhere else for her to go. The more she gets out there, the worse she does.
If she does that, she might run into Trump at Madison Square Garden at the end of October, because he's going to be having a rally in MSG, pal, which I think is just, it's frivolity. It's straight up ego, but he's doing it. And it seems like Trump's strategy is maybe working in the sense that if he's making inroads in battleground states that Harris must have to win, and is then going to make her spend money in states that should be in her pocket, seems to me that means Harris will have less resources and time to go try to win battlegrounds that could ease her path to victory. Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. let's get back to the clip here and some of the analysis that went on with this show here.
Baldwin has her down 3, not Baldwin has Harris down 3. Why is the Baldwin campaign sharing its polling with the Wall Street Journal? Good question.
I think we know the answer to that, right, Ross? Why would a campaign share internal polling to the media?
Well, I think I've seen this clip, so it's interesting what their take was, to be honest. I think we should touch on it after.
Okay, so let's play the clip, and then you let me know when to stop, pal.
Sean, why would a campaign share their polling negative for their candidate? Because they want more visits? Is that the reason?
I mean, I think part of this is like a Hillary Clinton redux, which is that you want to make sure people understand what's going on. Plus, you're tied to it. Tammy Baldwin can't win if Kamala Harris loses.
She can. Yeah, she can. She can. I think.
Okay. Well,
in a close race, she can.
I love Sean. I love Sean's face there. Yeah, sure she can win.
Yeah.
No problem. I believe that. Sure.
Well, like you were saying, it could be a ticket split situation. She could win without Harris winning.
That would be interesting to see. By the way,
she's incumbent, right?
Power of
incumbency.
We're seeing 50 people across all platforms right now. We're glad you're all here. Wherever you are, like, share, give us a thumbs up wherever you are. Let us know you're here. Hit us up in the chat and let's talk a little bit as well. Back to the clip.
Okay, maybe it's not a 5,000 vote squeaker, but I think part of this is to make sure that they understand this. But I will say this, off topic, Alyssa Slotkin said the same thing last week in Michigan. Like, this is
correct.
What we were talking about the other day. This
correct.
Is
correct.
This is I'm not feeling my best right now about where we are on Kamala Harris in a place like Michigan right now. We have her underwater in our polling.
They are sending.
I think that's the challenge for Democrats is the trend lines, right? I mean, if you just go back now for the last 3 to 4 weeks in Michigan and in Wisconsin, not that Harris was up, 7 and it went down to 4, down to 1. It's gone from 3 to 2 to 1 to tied. And at the same time, those Senate candidates, Casey, Slotkin, and Baldwin, are seeing the same trend line.
All much closer.
By the way,
so
you
do it to sound the alarm bell. You are sounding the alarm bell in the party.
Sounding the alarm bell in the party. So that's the reason for putting out the internal polls, pal?
Possibly, right? I just wanted to clean up some stuff we talked about a minute ago.
Sure.
Like the Wisconsin situation with Baldwin, it may not be a ticket splitting situation, right? Like I don't envision people voting for Trump and then voting for Baldwin. I envision, like I keep saying, there's a good, healthy, chunk of our quote unquote party that is going to go vote for Trump and leave the rest of the ballot blank, right? And that is why Trump is going to New York. Now, what I hope doesn't happen is that you mentioned Hillary Clinton ignoring, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania in 2016. I don't think Trump is ignoring them because thankfully he has J.D. Vance making the rounds out there. And I think J.D. Vance is actually better to make the rounds than Trump himself in a lot of cases, right? Because Trump's not going to get any new voters. All he can do is stir up the base where J.D. has some crossover appeal. What Trump is doing in New York and places like that, he's even going to California, is the down ballot races. He's trying to ensure that the House of Representatives stays Republican because it looks like we're going to get the Senate and it looks like, we could potentially hold the House. And I don't think they're going to be stupid like they were the last time Trump won if we have both houses of Congress and the White House and not pass his agenda. And, they fell for the Russia bullshit the last time around and Trump didn't get shit passed in his first 2 years in office.
Right. So I see what you're saying. I think this is why they got J.D. Vance is for this Rust Belt swing state issue that they have in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania. He probably plays better in the Midwest because he's from Ohio. I am worried that Trump is going to places like New York and other places where he shouldn't because the race is going to be tight in the Sun Belt as well. Should he be going to Arizona? Should he be going to North Carolina? Should he be going to Georgia? What do you think about that?
The great thing about Donald the great thing about Donald Trump is he's like, even though he's an older guy and he's not getting younger, he has limitless energy. It's not like he can only do an event a week. He'll go to New York, whatever day he's going, and the next day be in Georgia. Like he's fine with doing lots of events. I don't think it's a terrible idea what he's doing. If it pays off and he wins the White House and they hold Congress, the House of Representatives with those seats in New York that we won the last cycle, then he'll be proved to be a genius. But if he loses the race by like a point in any of the states you mentioned, then he'll be looked at like a Hillary Clinton, foolish mistake.
Yeah, it can certainly come out that way. Both candidates are walking a tightrope, right? I think that Trump is in a better position. If the polling is any indication, then Trump is in a better position historically compared to 2016 and 2020. The question then becomes, will other things affect voter turnout? Like a storm in Florida, for instance, that takes out a lot of people, that goes up into North Carolina, where there's disaster in Asheville and places like that. That's when you start questioning strategies about, you now have a 30-day window to get your message out as much as possible. Yes. Is it then wise to hit back to national TV and say, you know what, maybe a Fox News debate would be a good idea?
Well, I think Trump, once the dust settles in the next week or so, needs to go to North Carolina. It's going to look political no matter when you do this, but the RNC really needs to step up their game in North Carolina. Florida, and by the way, these storms are horrific, right? It sucks talking politics while there's active hurricanes going on and people lost everything.
Of course, yes.
Right? But the future of the country is at stake here, and this is a political podcast, so we're going to talk about politics, right? The RNC really needs to dig in North Carolina and figure out that they just loosened some of the rules in North Carolina to allow people to vote a little more flexible, right? So you got to be careful with cheating there, because that's what the Democrats do. But we have to track down our voters. Where are they? Did they flee to New Jersey, right? Where are they right now, and how are we going to get them to vote? Additionally, one more thing on this topic. I know our side is against early voting. I am against early voting. In a perfect world, we would get rid of it and go back to election day. However, these storms were a wake-up call. If you get the opportunity to vote early, go vote early, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen, right? North Carolina, the early voting wasn't in progress before the storm, but had it been, if this storm would have landed 2 weeks from now in another Republican stronghold or a swing state where we can't afford to lose any voters, and then their votes weren't cast, we'd be up shit's creek, right? So Republicans, if you're listening and you get the chance to vote early, right? We got to change the laws to stop this in the future, but this is the way it is right now. Take advantage of it. Last thing on this, Gene.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Romney McDaniel, former RNC chair, right? Mm-hmm. I was no big fan. However, she used to say something that made a lot of sense. And I even heard Lara Trump say it a few times. She's the co-chair of the RNC now. Vote early. Another reason why is the RNC and campaigns have very finite resources, right? As we get closer to election day, they have to get out the vote. So they have to determine who did not vote yet and then harass those people through phone banking and door knocking to go out and vote. If you vote early, that population shrinks and the money they have can be used to actually go and get out the voters who haven't voted. If so many Republicans wait until election day, we have to waste a ton of money tracking you all down, right? Ronald McDaniel used to say that, she was right, but she couldn't influence them. Yeah, we have to vote early.
Well, the good news is the states that have started early voting have seen a significant increase in Republicans turning out for early voting. So hopefully that trend continues across the country. If you like that clip from our new show, Behind Enemy Lines, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any other shows, and tune in live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.